I'm Ari Melber. Our top story is President Trump on defense over the plunging and volatile economy. This story keeps kicking. America's largest companies are down, all of them in the market since the Trump tariff war began. It's a swift toll that we've seen first on Wall Street, trillions wiped out in days. But it is heading for Main Street, and I'm going to show you why tonight, because we're seeing new indications from big box stores to malls, and we know it's coming for Main Street for a few reasons. I always try to give you the evidence, show you why we know what we think we know, and here it is. First, there's detailed data on the inventories and supply chains. So it shows when American stores will be running out of these products, many of which have some foreign ingredient in them, and they're running out of what was purchased before the tariff war began. Second, some of America's largest companies track all of this because it's their whole business and expertise. This is what they do, so they're all over it. And they are now formally warning about the coming Trump slump any way they can, which includes what I'm about to show you, the largest employer in America, Walmart, which has over 1.5 million employees. They employ more Americans than any other company. And the Walmart chief just joined an attempted Trump tariff intervention, along with the CEOs of the other huge retailers, Target and Home Depot, to privately warn Trump that his tariffs, let's take this in full, I want people to be able to see this, his tariffs, you can read along, the tariff and trade policy will not only disrupt supply chains and raise prices, it will lead to empty shelves. Now that's big. If people were upset over, say, high prices during the inflation years that we had, imagine high prices and basic products also being wiped out, echoing the empty shelf panic of the pandemic that we all remember in Trump's first term. Well, empty shelves are an unpopular outcome. It impacts people's lives, their ability to plan. You end up having to go other places, spend more gas money. You know the drill. It will also, obviously, if it happens again, impact Trump's political approval. Now, when could these empty shelves hit? The disruptions could land, again, let's see the whole thing. The Trump disruptions could become noticeable in 2 weeks. I'll just tell you at home, I want that big on your screen because it's one of those little sets of words that will matter a lot if it happens in 2 weeks. Today it's in Axios. Today it's on, of course, television news covering the markets or the economy or the politics. But a heck of a lot more Americans are going to notice if in 2 weeks from tonight, their shelves are bare at all the Walmarts around the country. It's sobering. It's also foreseeable based on what so many economists and conservative allies have been telling the White House. Sobering for a Trump administration that keeps trying to claim the trillions lost in the trade war are just temporary pain, but it will lead, soon enough, they have said, to better results, which certainly means something other than COVID-style empty shelves. Now, the warning I just mentioned, this private meeting with the president, is the runway for Trump edging back to a pattern that he's repeated. Trump is a self-proclaimed trade warrior who often breaks Tom Petty's first law, don't back down. And also, by the way, Sun Tzu's teaching that the true warrior only fights battles he's already won, which simply means you assess the opponent and resources first so that you don't pick losing battles. That would be a different approach, say, than firing off economic shots at China if it's in a battle you can't ultimately win, one that even your own team has been admitting is a set of unsustainable tariffs. So that is the runway for this Trump-induced whiplash hitting Wall Street right now. Investors eyeing what they call the Trump tax of these tariffs, and now the Trump cost of uncertainty, while hoping the president will end the back and forth once and for all and finally maybe just cave.
This make or break hour begins with the ongoing market volatility taking investors on yet another ride today.
It's been a really rough road. There's been so much volatility, Adam. And I think that investors are tired. Like Ryan says, they want clarity.
It doesn't get rid of the volatility. Some days up 1,000, some days down 1,000, depending on what's coming out of the White House.
How are you feeling today?
I feel like I need a neck brace. The volatility has been insane.
Insane volatility. Now, every economy faces some inevitable volatility, but these experts, many of whom, by the way, lean towards conservative views on policy, see Trump as the cause of this avoidable volatility. Fox News' sister outlet, the Wall Street Journal, has declared Trump's tariffs now the greatest economic threat. It's a bad report card for the first 100 days. Over on actual Fox TV, where they first downplayed the market's plunge, they avoided even showing a stock ticker on those big crash days. Well, now there are more voices saying trade wars are bad and the administration's briefings are straining credibility.
Trade wars don't have a lot of history of working out very well for any party who's involved in it.
If you come up every other day, yeah, we just had a great call with so-and-so and these guys, and it starts to take away credibility. It starts to smack of desperation.
Credibility fading, desperation coming out of the White House. And I can remind you some of the other indications we've heard. Peter Navarro, the trade advisor, and others said they had dozens of deals, up to 90 deals in the works. If that were true, you would expect some of those deals to be announced, especially from such a PR-focused administration. We're still at zero. No announced deals. What we are announcing, what we are covering, what we are hearing is this talk of unsustainability or people around Trump basically trying to give the markets some sort of cold comfort, some sort of hope was the word of the day yesterday. I showed you that in headlines if you happen to catch the news last night. And then these leaks and these indications that Trump will eventually back down, almost trying to will him towards the reality that the markets say is needed, that Walmart says he has about 2 weeks left to decide on, or we get empty shelves. Here's a quote. Tariffs could come down to between 50 and 65%. That would be slashing Trump's big China tariffs to, quote, de-escalate a trade war that has not gotten the United States or the administration anything so far. That's the Wall Street Journal quoting a White House official. Politico, referring to Trump's past explanation when he backed down partially and saying another case of the yips taken together, it marks Trump's biggest economic climb down since the last one. Another indication of just how badly most of this stuff is landing. You can remember Trump did retreat on the reciprocal tariffs, camouflaging that in a 90-day pause, and backed down on his attacks against the Fed chair. They were beefing only because the Fed chair had made accurate points about the cost of tariffs. So there has been some retreating, but many of the key tariffs are still in place. There are no trade deals yet announced. And because this is starting as a market story, as I'm telling you tonight, we are, according to the big box retailers, 2 weeks away from it being a story that everyone's going to wake up to in a very, very literal way in their grocery stores, in their malls, in their big box stores. But right now, we're hearing more from the market folks who catch this stuff first. Here's a billionaire investor, Ken Griffin. And he says, what Trump is doing has tarnished the American brand.
The American brand, right? The United States was more than just a nation. It's a brand. It's a universal brand, whether it's our culture, our financial strength, our military strength. America rose beyond just being a country. It was like an aspiration for most of the world. And we're eroding that brand right now.
Yeah. That brand has been eroding on a number of fronts. I've told you before, there are things that are important but harder to measure. Like how does it play across the United States and the rest of the world when we are seen as in a messy, almost sometimes literally risky or dangerous way, pulling back on our commitments to other countries, on European security, on foreign aid to countries that we've said we would back up over the years. But that's harder to measure, right, at first. The market stuff is hitting fast. The brand is in trouble. The actual full faith and credit of the United States, our ability to pay our debts and back up the world economy, has been more questioned in the last 90 days than any time in the last several years. Doesn't mean the Biden administration handled prices and inflation perfectly. It just means there was something worse than that, and it's what we're seeing now. There's another brand here, which involves, of course, the business billionaire, richest guy in the world who's been tasked to do so much for the Trump administration, Elon Musk, and that's also eroding. We've seen a real backlash as people have started to understand how he is trying to do his version of pseudo-governing. And you can only call it pseudo because he didn't commit to what others do in giving up business interests or devoting himself to the public interest. He wants to do both. He wants to run his companies and parachute into different agencies and make big sweeping changes. So how's that going? Well, the new polling shows 47% of Americans view Tesla negatively, compared to only about a quarter positive. Half have a negative view of Musk, much, much higher negatives than positives. And Musk's power has been clipped a little. We were told in a cabinet meeting that leaked in the Times that Trump was pulling him back from some roles. Today, NBC reporting Musk got into a shouting match with the Treasury Secretary in the White House recently, clashing over who would really call the shots at the IRS. Musk has said he's going to reduce his role in this kind of work, and Tesla has seen a 70% drop in sales, and its overall market value, I showed you the top 500 companies down, say, about 12%. Well, Tesla's faring worse. Down 41% means about half of the entire stock's value, the company value, has been wiped out since inauguration. Many investors and analysts say partly related to Musk trying to do it all, but not doing any job particularly well. Many Americans voting with their wallets. They say they will never buy Teslas again, and it is a consumer-facing product. We're seeing related anger at the town halls.
My concern right now, and I think for a lot of Americans, is Elon Musk.
I'm worried about the power that Elon Musk has been given without any kind of election.
Are you willing to use your subpoena power to say, Musk, come in here, stand in front of Congress, and answer some hard questions? Are you going to subpoena him at some point?
Elon Musk and Doge have been authorized by the President of the United States.
Can we count on you to go back to Washington and demand immediate oversight into Doge and Elon?
We do have an internet where people can find just about anything really fast. We have news, we have television news, you have YouTube, right? But it still takes time for big things to sink in. Sometimes people come up to me and they ask, does anyone care? Is anyone upset? Is this all just okay with people? Well, I just showed you in data of the whole country and in examples in the town halls and in all the other indications we have, no, it's not okay with people. There was a close election. They promised to do certain things. Among those promises were get prices under control and just help the economy go boom. Well, it went boom in a very different way, boom to bust. And now this is sinking in, and we're still weeks away from the very, very real crescendo that you could see in stores if, according to Walmart and other big, again, conservative leaving institutions, unless Trump backs down further on the tariffs. We're going to deal with the facts and the numbers. We have a very special guest on all of this when we're back in 90 seconds.
What's the timetable for the reduction in the tariffs against China? The president was ambiguous about it. Scott Bessent seemed to suggest it wouldn't happen until negotiations are at least underway.
Let me be clear. There will be no unilateral reduction in tariffs against China.
A little more whiplash. We are joined by CNBC senior economic reporter Steve Leisman. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
We're going to call on you more and more. We need the CNBC side of the family these days.
Remember what Hunter S. Thompson said at the beginning of The Great Shark Hunt: when the going gets weird, the weird turned pro. So here I am.
The weird turned pro.
Exactly.
Hey, Fear and Loathing?
Yeah, Fear. It was The Great Shark Hunt. That was the opening quote.
But Fear and Loathing on Wall Street.
On Wall Street, yeah.
Yeah, just trying to go bar for bar.
You win.
No, it's not a contest, but you brought Hunter. Now we've got
Hunter to Hunter.
You look at this, and the markets talk about volatility and whiplash. Place that for us economically against the shelves going bare, because my view as an observer, I'm not an econ guy like you, is if they hit the bare shelves, a heck of a lot more Americans will say, that's what this policy gets us?
I think the way to characterize it, Ari, is we're on the precipice here. I don't know if it's all inevitable at this point. There's a report that only weird people like me read, which is the Beige Book from the Federal Reserve. What is that? It's a collection of economic anecdotes from all around the country. People talk to the Fed, and the Fed puts it all in a big report every 6 weeks. This one read like the one before the one that tells you we're in a recession. So not quite there. There's talks of possible layoffs coming, companies talking about raising prices, 12 districts, no growth, 4 were negative. All the sorts of things you might see if it continues, that's going to be a recession.
Remind us the definition of a recession.
Well, technically, a recession is when the National Bureau of Economic Research Committee's dating committee, business cycle dating committee, decides it is. What it is functionally is you have declines in production, declines in employment, declines in growth. People think it's 2 quarters of economic contraction. It's not really that, but that tends to happen when you have negative growth over 2 quarters.
I don't know if you remember the old saying, what happens on spring break stays in spring break, or what happens in Florida stays in Florida. Yeah. You know that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of folks in the MAGA side are hoping that what happens on Wall Street, quote, stays on Wall Street. It doesn't seem like this is contained. It seems like if they don't make a tariff change, this is going to be a contagion across the real economy. Is that fair?
I think that's crazy for them to say that. I mean,
you've heard that though.
Well,
sure.
but I've heard it, but I don't understand why they're saying it. When company stocks fall, what do? They do everything they can to return to profitability. Yeah. They cut capital investment. They cut jobs. They do what they can to get their stock price back up. That's what they're supposed to, and that's what they will do. What I'm hearing right now are these horrible and very heart-wrenching anecdotes from small business right now. People laying off their workers because all of a sudden their products are not, they can't either build the products, they're not getting the products, or their products are too expensive. We had somebody on today from a toy company, and he sells toys to schools for disabled kids to help them learn. That has gone up by 100 or 150% right now. And that's the kind of thing that, as you point out, it goes from the technical and the economic to the human, and I think we're on the precipice of that.
Yeah, and then we showed bumping into this discussion, the White House press secretary repeating they'll never change anything. Then you have other aides, often in what they call these blind quotes, these anonymous quotes, saying, no, we're about to deal with the fact that this is unsustainable. The New Yorker satirized this briefly and said it was at this point, gentlemen, that the president decided it was his plan all along to reverse course.
I have to, a blast from the past, but back in the mid-'80s, this great columnist for The Nation called Alexander Coburn, he wrote a thing about Iran-Contra Gate, and he said, the definition of a scandal is when every harebrained rumor turns out to be true. That's the way I treat this as a reporter. He's going to fire the Fed chief. You have to take that seriously. And then what happens when you as a reporter go and report the very thing that they said? The next day they tell you it was fake news. Okay. Yeah. So we have big tariffs on, and then they came out this morning, and the market rallied today. It was up today. Why? Because the Treasury Secretary said that we're going to de-escalate. Okay. What does de-escalate mean? You read the numbers earlier, 50 to 65% tariffs. That's not de-escalation. That is a prior definition of Armageddon before we had the current definition.
Well, and that's what's so interesting. And you may already know this. MSNBC and Beat viewers, very informed, on the ball. So some of them, we don't have any schadenfreude here because we want things to go well, but some of them are watching Wall Street, and some of the people you talk to wake up after 8+ years to the Trump experience. Maybe for them now it has different consequences, but we've all seen this before. You take the threats, literally, the things they say, oh no, he's not really going to do that. He'll do it and then some. And walking him off the plank involves all of this magical thinking and emperor has no clothes stuff. And as you say, you get back to something that 2 years ago or whatever would have been a scandal to begin with. Now, I'm going to bring in something else for you, and I think you're going to like it more than that little, whatever that was. Go ahead.
It was all like when, if you were carrying as a kid 5 glasses and one of them dropped, my dad would say to me, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
Okay. So you took these business people that are looking at this and saying, we didn't expect this.
Well, they're shocked, but it's like follow the basic news. And maybe they care more about the market story than how this has happened on immigration, on democracy, right? On people storming the Capitol, on pardoning people who,
and it's important.
He said, oh, they won't really pardon. No, he pardoned the violent seditious. I'm going to pause you for a second. I have to do that as the moderator.
Right.
Because music is also a big business.
Big business.
Fair. Both parties, as you and I think a lot of folks know, have turned to the concert game, to Ticketmaster, and they're exploring the problems with price gouging. This came up for Taylor.
Right.
Mayhem when Swifties couldn't get on Ticketmaster's site. Other claims that it's a functional monopoly. The Grateful Dead, who now tour in a different constellation as the Dead, at one point made their own ticketing service for fans as a way to route around this, showing the band's improv skills, the jamming, extended perhaps into entrepreneurship. You are, like it or not, one of the prominent fans of this great institution. You mentioned them elliptically on the show before.
Yes.
And so I wanted to ask you, from your overlap, business expert and concert fan.
Right.
Is there going to be business reform of Ticketmaster and these institutions? Is it on the level? Because Lord knows you have a constituency from Swifties to Deadheads who say it's got to work. There's got to be a way to make it work better than this.
I think there has to be. It's a very tricky business right now. Who is going to step up with the technology? It's what happens in our time, Ari. The person who comes forward with the technology owns the monopoly. And the monopoly gives them that power to set the price. They're trying to do things like make it all inclusive into one piece. People are starting to rebel. And the problem, as a musician myself, having a band that I play in, is the underneath part has been completely gutted. That is a big problem. You have these winner-take-all. It's a winner-take-all thing in the rest of business. It's
but is it a monopolistic
business
problem, or is it more finding the right competition that they could be out there?
Well, there are companies out there that do provide on a small scale what Ticketmaster does, but the idea of the technology of Ticketmaster being able to do 24/7 ticketing all over the country at one time in that kind of capacity. I'm not an expert in this. I just kind of came to it and followed it. And it's going to be very difficult to have the kind of competition that theory is that a duopoly creates enough competition. Coke and Pepsi's fine. There is nothing that rivals Ticketmaster.
The rival segments, exactly. All right. So we're running out of time here, but you've seen the Dead at the Sphere. You're going back.
Bringing my boys.
Yeah. Where do you put the Sphere in the pantheon of all possible Dead experiences? If you include Red Rocks, if you include Fillmore 70s shows.
Or Lewiston 1981.
Yeah. Nassau Coliseum.
It's a whole new thing where they have really merged the technology and the music in a way that nobody ever imagined. I think that no band is more capable or has better track record because they have all this iconic art that works so well at the Sphere.
Yeah.
And it's a really terrific experience.
So you're making
ridiculously.
You're making it is overpriced by any standard, but you're making an artistic point,
right?
Which is an audio visual experience for music.
Right.
Works better with artists that organically already engage in that experience. Well, it's your point.
I agree.
Yeah.
Although I will say, Phil Lesh once said when he was angered about people with the tie-dye background, he goes, "Nobody ever went home humming the lights." It's apparently a Phil Lesh quote.
I didn't know that Phil Lesh quote, but it's almost counterintuitive because they cared more about lights as Phish did and drums in space and making its experience.
They haven't brought it up to the level of Phish. Phish is like what they say. The lighting guy is the fifth member. Is
yeah. It's not that level. I mean, when you watch Phish and the jam, now we're really running over. But when the solo
it's
jam,
never going to happen again. You realize
well, it's live television.
That's right.
When a solo jam really is taking up energy and the lights are building with it and it brings the whole communal experience into seeing that person. Yeah, you look, we love having you on.
Thanks,
we get into a lot of stuff. Steve, thank you. Coming up, the backlash to Trump, the protest, the courtroom rebukes. Is there a tipping point out there? We have two very special guests coming up. The Trump administration is administering a crackdown, trying to use federal power, and in some places finding pushback. There was the deportation debate, and we've covered that a lot. A lower court judge has slammed the administration for bad faith refusal to comply with discovery, saying that ends now. But there's resistance outside of the courtroom as well. Law firms, which of course do a lot in court, were pressed because they had previously represented people that Trump doesn't like. And a few cut deals right away. We covered that. But now the judge overseeing a case that challenges Trump's effort to use the government in this way basically found, quote, a temper tantrum from the Justice Department and the OMB worthy of a 3-year-old, not the DOJ. That is good news for folks who want to challenge those orders. Then you have the protests around the country this weekend we showed you, and polling that Trump's approval is dropping. It's at 40, which is down 7 points since February. All of this are just a few indicators that the pushback works, that there are choices to be made. And so we have a governor, Jay Inslee, who actually ran for president, and our friend Molly Jong-Fast to get into what effective pushback looks like. Next.
We, the people, are powerful. We are strong. We have bent the arc of the moral universe, and now is that moral moment again.
Democrats trying new tactics and finding some momentum. We're joined by the former Democratic governor of Washington, Jay Inslee, and Vanity Fair's Molly Jong-Fast. Governor, when you look at some of the targeting that would probably lose in the long run, like the law firms, we didn't get an initial case because some of the first law firms settled. That was the first news. Now I just quoted from a proceeding where judges seem very skeptical of government power being used to target firms this way. What does that tell you about the nature of the pushback? Because we've heard about picking the right battles and Democrats saying, well, are they only advocating for this or that detainee versus fighting everything because that's the only way you'll find out what sticks?
Look, what we've learned is that courage is contagious. Somebody's got to go first. And there is an overwhelming sentiment in this country that people are tired of Trump's chaos and corruption and increased costs. They just need a spark. And we're seeing these sparks now. And I have to tell you, the most heartening thing to me is in the last couple of weeks, and I've been banging the drum on this for several weeks now, of law firms are standing up and are surrounding Perkins Coie with a wall of resistance. Colleges are standing up. 150 colleges signed a letter the other day. My college, University of Washington Faculty Senate, just passed an initiative saying we're going to stand up in sort of a NATO Big Ten. So the Big Ten conference, we hope is going to be in a NATO-like all for one. And that's very important because if you just hunker down and try to think, I hope he doesn't notice I'm around, that doesn't work. Winston Churchill, when he was talking about the evils of Hitler, was talking about it's not a good strategy to feed the crocodile in hopes you'll be the last eaten. So I think people are figuring this out. They're getting to the bulwarks. Civil society is standing. And this is really important because we've got to make sure that civil society, all of our organizations, will stand behind the Supreme Court when it does rein this guy in, which is happening, and I believe will happen in spades coming up.
Yeah, and it happened at a 7-2 vote over the weekend, which is a big deal. This president is not Hitler, although Larry David in a satirical piece in the Times did explore how many dinners one could have with a dictator. Molly, you write about this, and I just liked your very clear turn of phrase that instead of liberals talking about responding to Trump and, look at what he's doing and rushing, you basically say, actually, the administration can't fight so many wars at once. The lesson from Harvard is be visible, loud, and stay fighting. That liberals or opponents or even people, nonpartisan people who protect democracy, have to also pick fights.
Right. And I think there's an argument, we were talking about this before, that Harvard is actually in a better spot than Columbia is, right? Because when you acquiesce, you become a captured institution. And when you become a captured institution, you have to make a deal with this administration. And we've seen just with the tariffs that this administration goes back and forth on deals. So Columbia is now trying to make a deal with the Trump administration, well as Harvard has the courts, and the courts are going, and what we've seen in the courts is, and we saw this with the law firms, the courts end up siding almost, not all the time, but mostly with the people who are suing the administration. So you'd be much better off with the courts than you might be trying to make a deal with this administration.
Right. And you're only going to find out then. I mean, I get why some of these institutions don't want to be the pointy edge of the spear. They might like to hide. As you said, that doesn't work. But if you actually challenge it, then you learn where the lines are. If you have to settle later because you lose the case, well, then at least you can tell your stakeholders, we tried. But the opposite's happening. Here's a report on that case I mentioned. The judge appears to incline to side against Trump and block the law firm targets. Judge Howell saying in the hearing, the administration's efforts to target these firms merely for who they supported, and there's a right to counsel in this country, quote, echoed the repression of McCarthyism and the Red Scare era.
Two things. One, you got to understand, I'm an old lawyer. Judges are usually reserved and kind of benign in their language. These judges' hair are on fire about this insult on democracy, and they know where this can head of everybody's rights being threatened. That's number one. And from the individual, from the colleges and the law firms, if you watch crime drama, there's one rule. Blackmailers, extortionists always come back for more. And this guy's going to keep coming back for more until you stand up against him. So everybody needs to do everything, everywhere, all at once. You need to litigate. You shouldn't collapse for 1 second. There's no deal to be made with a voracious appetite like Donald Trump. And so you're starting to see people picking up with that message. And it's very heartening to me because there's a reason to believe we're going to lose this democracy if people don't do this. And it's not just Congress. It's colleges, chambers of commerce, law firms, accountants, every professional organization, the media.
Shout out to the media.
Well, we saw George
Some
Clooney.
people say they're the enemy of the people, but I'm not so sure.
No.
We saw George Clooney play last night. And
oh, you did?
On the very night.
Talk about McCarthyism. Explain to people what play that is.
And management was pushing on Edward R. Murrow to give up and not go after McCarthy. That same day, the executive producer of 60 Minutes resigned because he's getting too much pressure from management.
Yeah.
Every organization in America today, every social organization, I believe, has some need and obligation to stand up against this guy.
Yeah, so Governor, let's dig into that because that's about free speech.
Yeah.
And a strange thing has happened on the internet where certain business people and propagandists found that free speech was a good talking point. So they took the talking point, not the substance.
Yes.
But you're talking about, and we might be covering this more this week, that 60 Minutes, a venerable institution, their executive producer, who is nonpartisan, got the track record, said the Trump pressure, which came up and over on the corporate side, attacked free speech. I want to be clear. There's not an allegation of a law broken, right? Because the government didn't send the cops in or something. They didn't send the FBI in, right? But the free speech principles that journalists in 60 Minutes and others back were so compromised, says the 60 Minutes leader who resigned, by those Trump corporate efforts. So my question to you as someone who's been a big Democrat, run a state, do Democrats need to get back on the free speech bandwagon? Have they almost lost the branding on this to business people?
You know, I'm whether you call it free speech or whether you say, look, we're paying our taxes, so there's one thing we ought to expect every president: just follow the damn law. Right. That's what our attorney general said. That's all we're asking here. That may resonate more. Follow the damn law, respect my rights, we follow the Constitution and your oath. Either you call it free speech or just quit abusing me as a totalitarian. Either one works for me. But the point is, this executive, the way our system is set up, they have so many levers if they want to be evil to pull, and they're pulling almost all of them.
Yeah.
Contracts, firing people.
Right, which is big government abuse. You want big government in your campus.
You want big government. Listen,
in your boardroom. Yeah.
If you're a conservative right now, if you're a true old-fashioned conservative, you ought to be going crazy what Trump is doing, because he is demonstrating how evil government could be to your citizens.
And that it's corrosive. We want a free society where people make up their own mind, whether that's in business, which is private commerce, or a campus, which is independent. So they're going against all that. Molly's coming back. I'm running over on time, but I'm going to ask you the question. We often have artists and interesting people in here. We do a little bit of a fit check. Do you know what a fit check is, Governor?
Well, I don't know. I checked my biceps against Schwarzenegger. Doing very well.
Well, it relates to that, fit, flex, but fit refers to outfit.
Yes.
So sometimes we talk to artists about their diamonds, their bling, their jewelry. I noticed that you're sporting our great home state's apple, if I'm not mistaken. Can you tell us about that?
This is the Washington State's apple pin. As a former governor,
you can hold it up. Yeah.
When I meet someone who's really impressive, who is an inspirational character and stands for democracy, I can give them the pin. So today, my apple pin goes to a son of Washington State, R.M. Elbert.
Get out of it. Well, that's not why I brought it up. Now it looks like I really wanted the apple.
You want some of my jewelry.
Well, we've never. Usually they're diamonds, and people don't just hand off the diamond.
Well, you can give it to your mother. She deserves it too.
Well, shout out to my mom, a PhD in the great state of Washington. There it is. I didn't know that was going to happen. This is why it's live TV. Governor Inslee, Molly comes back. Our thanks to both of you.
Right.
We turn to the backlash and a lot of interesting developments from government all the way to making Oscar judges watch Oscar films. We'll explain. We have a lot of fun with Molly coming up. It is time to fall back, and tonight's guests are making their fallback debuts. Vanity Fair's Molly Jong-Fast, a writer and political analyst. She's covered authoritarianism, democracy, and media criticism. She hosts the Fast Politics podcast. She has a new memoir coming out. And we have a leader of the original mixtape game, DJ Whoo Kid, who's flipped iconic instrumentals for new verses, a hip-hop icon. He's worked with top artists, cultural figures, a fixture in New York rap, who I've been listening to his mixtapes for literally 20 years, a SiriusXM host. He was instrumental at breaking artists, launching 50 Cent's explosive debut. That was before the studio albums everybody knows. Yes. The classic, If You Really Know. DJ Whoo Kid's 50 Cent is the Future mixtape. His new EP is out now. Guess who? And let's take a look at a sample of his run.
What's up, Cardi?
Hey, what's good, man?
See you and move around with them pounds and Berettas.
You're looking at a jacket that's 5 or 10 racks. Like, how you gonna look at it now? Is Wiz Khalifa still gonna buy it? I don't.
This my song. This my song.
Muscle talk.
And when DJ Who Kid hosts you in the studio, we could show it looks a little bit like this.
Changed up, but I'm still in the crowd. Shorty do it for the clout. She ain't trying like mine. She want a dog, I'm like a drought. Changed up, but I'm still in the crowd. Shorty do it for the clout. She ain't trying like mine. She want a dog, I'm like a drought.
You were saying you remember that day?
How did we survive that Snoop Dogg evening?
Well, we observed a great time, and then we had a good time. Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you, man. We should shout out Snoop Dogg. You got a new deal with NBC now, I think.
Yeah, it's funny because we grew up on Snoop Dogg and the legend, and on the NBC Sports side, he's become, of course, a global Olympics ambassador. I love that. Real quick, Molly, your fallback.
My fallback is the weather, right? Noah, is that what I'm supposed to?
Respect.
Yes. We need the weather. We need the weather services. It may be a fallback if the Trump administration gets its way.
Yeah, that basically these cuts are having very real world impacts where people want to know who you're going to, right? Yep. You want to have FEMA and the National Weather Service be accurate. It's not really a political thing. It's just like, let's make sure they can do the job when we got a hurricane.
That's right. And Project 2025 outlined how they were going to get rid of it, and now they're trying to get rid of it.
And they're trying to do it, which is wild. You were talking Oscar news for your fallback.
Yeah, I just saw that. I always thought that they had to watch the movie just to vote on it. And then I just found out some of them never even watched the movie on the vote.
Wild, right? And it shows you, so the new Oscar rule is all the judges have to watch the movies they're voting on. And in announcing this rule, they basically revealed themselves as having, winners who win despite nobody saw the movie?
I would assumed everybody saw the movie. All these years, I've just been like watching it.
Do you think this happens with Grammys?
Not that Will Smith is there.
That was funny. Yeah, stay correct, right? Like because sometimes with the Grammys, it's a world you know well. I love going to the Grammys. They've improved over the years, but there's been times where you wonder, did the judges really list all this, or did they go off fame or buzz or something?
I'm about to snitch on it. I don't really listen to it. I vote. I'm in part of voting things too. I usually just like the artist, or I look at the legendary status sometimes. But some of the music.
Wait a minute.
Some of the music.
Hold on. Wait. You just opened by saying the Oscar judges should watch, but you're saying as a Grammy judge, you don't always listen.
It's just so much music. And I don't even know what's going on half the time.
So maybe they shouldn't watch.
Molly, there's songs where people are just screaming. How do you vote on that?
Wow, you sound a little bit like an old head.
I'm not an old head because I do Rolling Loud. I DJ.
No, I know you're with it. I'm saying.
And I'm here to make everybody turn up. So some things I don't like, some things I like, but that's why people.
You know, Nas said, "Old head gave me old news."
Oh yeah.
That's right.
Can't have only the unks give the takes, Molly. You know what we're saying. Do you know what we're saying?
I absolutely do not know what we're saying.
What are we saying?
I need to translate.
What are we saying? Let's explain it, because we like to explain, Who Kid. Because Who Kid, you straddle. Let me explain this. You got, remember the old song, I like that old time of rock and roll?
Yeah.
Right? We have that same conversation from rock and roll and hip hop. I'm over 40. You might be over 40.
I'm like in my 50s.
I know.
You look good.
Yeah, you look great.
Yeah.
So we're on you were doing the mixtapes in the 90s. So but you straddle because you're out working with new artists, doing new things. You're playing clubs now. People want to listen to what you're playing now. So you're not quite doing the only old music thing. But you're saying that some of the new music sounds like screaming to you.
Yeah, but my cheat code is my kids. So they're like my A&Rs. So they'll tell me who to deal with. So the children are the A&Rs of this generation. So
would you say Wu-Tang is for the children?
My kids respect Wu-Tang. I think the cheat codes because of me.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know if, but you know what? They have a full 360 of fashion and conscious lyrics and stuff. I think the new kids now.
I haven't met your kids, Who Kid, but I bet Who Kid has some cool kids, if I had to guess.
No, they're cool. They're a little more educated than me, but but they'll tell me like what route and who to like deal with.
Who's their hot artist, any genre right now? Like what are they listening?
They're loving like Playboi Carti. They're loving like Ken Carson. They're loving like, the classic guys like, I don't know, J. Cole had a lot of issues with the war going on with the Kendrick and Drake stuff. But
well, J. Cole pulled a Biden and got out the race.
Oh, yo, this guy's a rapper.
How about that? All right, Molly, anything else on your fallback list?
He's not a rapper.
No.
No. I love Ari, but he's not a rapper. But he's a rap appreciator. My fallback list is that we need to protect norms and institutions, including the Weather Service and FEMA.
And the Oscars.
I mean, we got both sides of that from you. I got 30 seconds left. What do we need to know about your new project, the new album?
Oh, my new project is called Guess Who. It's out on all platforms, me and K. Charles. And we're touring like nonstop, and all the Rolling Louds will be there.
Respect. Was your secret in the early mixtape days just not clearing the samples? Was that your secret?
Oh, I was the king of that. I created cease and desist. that word came from.
You'd hear the biggest song in New York, and then it would be Who Kid and 50 or Tony Yayo just rapping over the big beat. And we used to download those on like LimeWire.
Like LimeWire, all the illegal stuff.
Yeah. Before we go, the governor gave me the apple. I see you got the bling, so you're probably not leaving that. Here. Well, I don't know if we can put it on.
Yeah, we got to put it on.
I don't know if we can put it on. Okay,
put it on.
Okay, let's
do it.
I'm not keeping, but I'm not keeping it. Just to be clear,
you can have it.
I'm not keeping it. All right, we're out of time, so there we go. We're gonna say it's a beat first, DJ Who Kid. Thank you. That does it for us.